Tonight, first of all, we are learning Leilu Nishmat Efrat Bat Shammai, Victor ben Reuven, Hillel ben Hillel? Okay, I'm going to ask you about that later. All right, we're also learning Leilu Nishmat Avraham ben Chaim Yehuda and Yecheskel ben Avraham, as well as Lefuat Shema to Chaya Esther Bas Barbara, as well to Lefuat Shema and Psurot Avot for Cassandra Bat Pulo. Okay, tonight we're going to be speaking about a topic that it's one of those topics that's not, the theoretical aspect of it is worth only so much. The real growth over here, the real power over here is in the practical aspect. When you're actually implementing it into your life. This is something that it's not like will possibly change your life. If you do this, it will guaranteed change your life. Like guarantee. The focus is really going to be on relationships, but it will change your life in all areas. So it's something that if you're able to tap into this, it's going to improve all areas of your life, not just your relationship. You know, there's a famous saying, I don't know why this is the famous saying, but it's happy wife, happy life. I don't know why it's not happy husband, happy. So maybe it doesn't rhyme with it. Or it's just the woman will say you're happy when she says you're happy, and then you have to be happy. A wife, you have to, she has to be happy. A husband has to be told to be happy and be like, oh, okay, fine, so I guess I have to be happy now. But maybe it's the rhyming thing that makes a little bit more sense. I would hope that would be the reason. But there is an idea that when you're in a healthy relationship, and it's not only a relationship with your husband, it's a relationship with your parents, it's a relationship with your employee. If you think about it, if you're in a bad relationship anywhere in your life, it affects your whole life. And if you're in a bunch of different relationships and they're all good, positive relationships, even if you're in like an abusive friendship, it destroys your whole life. If you're in an abusive relationship, or if parents are abusive, it destroys everything. But when you have a healthy foundation, everything's going to change. And I'm soon going to give you some examples on it. So yesterday, I asked this question to a different group, and I'm going to ask it to you again, and I want to hear what you will say to this. So don't think about it too much. So think about it. I'm going to ask you a question, and one of the first things that come to your mind, spit it out. Do what you never should be doing, called word vomit, right? So let's practice that. So I'm going to ask you a question. The first thing that comes to your mind, what you think something is, that's what you want to say. So the question is like this. The question is, what do you define as a good relationship?
I thought healthy and then boundaries right away.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Commitment.
Okay. Healthy and boundaries. Commitment. Healthy is that's like an overall, like it's all encompassing. It's like, what's a good relationship? Good relationship. Okay, it's all, which is true, but it's just healthy, but so boundaries is an interesting one. I would have not thought of that one. Anybody else have anything?
Respect.
Okay, respect. I got that.
Opinions.
Okay, I got respect. I got last night. I got very interesting ones. I got communication. That was a very big one. It was obviously a girl's, trust. Okay. Trust is important.
Loyalty.
Right, another foundation of trust and loyalty. So
Comfort also.
that's very close to where I was going to.
Sacrifice, not sacrifice, but being.
So the thing about sacrifice is that when you sacrifice for your relationship, how you know it's a good relationship is you don't feel like it's a sacrifice. So that's right. So that's a good point to go, because when you go and you say like, oh, I sacrificed so much for you, that means that you gave up something that you don't want to. Meaning that if somebody's sitting over there in his basement and he's playing a video game and he's inhaling some incense and he's doing other things that's bringing him up to certain levels and he's enjoying himself, and then he has an opportunity to, travel to space with Jeff Bezos or whoever is the other fake astronaut. I don't know, the other billionaire astronaut. There's like a few of them now, right? So you go to fly. What do you choose that you're going to do? Be like, wait a minute, but I'm going to sacrifice my video game and you're going to say like, it's not a sacrifice. I'll do it happily. And when you're sitting over there counting down to take off, saying your tefillah Saderech and Shema probably at the same time, you're not going to be thinking about like, oh, what did I sacrifice to do that? In fact, the way that you're going to go, you're going to be so happy that you're not going to feel that you gave up something. So when you're in a healthy relationship, you don't think that you gave up something if it's really like a good relationship. Be like, I want to do this for you. So it's not anymore something that like, oh, now I can't do it. Like, no, I want to do this. So it's no more something that it's a sacrifice from my end. But really and I'll tell you why I came to the question. The question was, what is considered a good relationship? And I came to an answer that's not a correct answer, but it's an answer. And that is, how do you define a good relationship? If you're happy. Now, what?
That was my first thing.
Oh, really?
I thought that was so like cheesy.
So that it's correct and incorrect at the same time. So I'll tell you what because why does that idea first come up? When you have somebody, let's say I'm sitting in front of a couple, right? And one of the first things that they come up, if they have an issue, otherwise they're not sitting, it'll be just weird, I don't know what you're doing, you're having a great relationship, just to let you know that, like, all right, good to know. They come in, there's an issue, so what do they usually say? We're not happy, or I'm not happy, or the wife says we're not happy because she speaks for both of them, and the husband says I'm not happy. So they go, and then, okay, what follows? Okay, so there's no communication, there's no loyalty, there's no respect, and then there's a lot of things that follow it. But for whatever reason, the secular world and the modern world, we focus that a bad relationship is we're just unhappy. That's usually when people come to some friction in a relationship, that's how they present it to the other spouse. Like, I'm not happy where I am right now, right? Which is, again, whether it's right or wrong is a completely different discussion, but it's something that comes up. And it's a really good point, even though it's not correct, like that's not what defines a relationship. Obviously, happiness should be coming out of the relationship, but that's not what defines it. But when you go and you focus on happiness, there's something very interesting. So the idea of I find the topic of happiness extremely important. I speak about it often, and even if I don't make the titles of it, I usually sneak it in something about happiness. And large companies invest tremendous amount of money, especially when it's commission-based, and they want when an employee is happier, they're more productive. When an employee is healthier psychologically, they're more productive. So they have psychologists on staff that they're able to go and they help. Like, where else? Now schools are starting to do that as well, from my understanding, where they have a psychologist at staff. I was very impressed to hear this, like, Jewish schools that they have psychologists. I remember speaking to a girl, and she was in high school and she had some issues, and she's like, yeah, I'll just speak to my school psychologist. I'm like, what school do you go to? Like, oh, really? I'm like, that's awesome. I'm like, I hope that they all take this, because I think it's very important. Kids go through certain things and they don't always have someone to speak to, and here they have a way to speak with. But in any case, when you go and you have a calm and collected mindset, you're happy, everything around you changes. Everything around you is more productive. And I'll tell you like this, when somebody's anxious, so a lot of people get anxious when they fly, right before they fly, they're nervous about this, they're nervous about that, you could see the tension. And if there's a long line, right away they're like, oh, I can't believe I have to wait for this TSA and I have to take off the shoes. And they're very, like, they're very like zoned in. I don't know if anybody here has ever had like a panic attack, but like it's like an anxiety is like a mini panic attack where you're like zoned in, you can't focus on anything else. You're not able to handle the stimuli. You're not able to use your brain the correct way. You're not coming to the correct conclusions. So that's what the anxiety. But when you're unhappy and you're happy, your actions change completely. Like, imagine this scenario. So imagine you have a guy that was diagnosed with a very, very severe illness, and he was diagnosed that the doctor told him that he's going to only have 2 months left to live. Like, imagine somebody hearing this information. He's going to be destroyed. And then the doctor goes and says, but it's not conclusive. You have to come back in 48 hours. Then we're going to reassess. And then we're going to come and we're going to tell you whether you have it or you're not. So it's like, doc, you're killing me over here. Can you just do it right now? Can you do it over here? Why do I got to wait for 48 hours? The doctor says we got to wait. He gave him all the medical terminology. He says we can't do it. We have to wait until 48 hours, until 2 days. So can you imagine that what this guy's going through, thinking that he has 2 months left to live, and how is he supposed to deal with that? So he has this 48 hours of pure anxiety, no menuchas nefesh, no settledness, no happiness, nothing. He comes in 48 hours later, they run the blood work, they run all the tests, the doctor says, I have amazing news for you. It's, what was in, and he shows him the two results. The first result, it says positive. The second result says conclusively that it's negative, it was a false positive, and really you're okay, you have a new lease on life. Now imagine this guy leaves the doctor, leaves the hospital, and he's driving home. And as he's driving home, there is an old, person that's driving, like the Florida driving, the left blinker was on since they left Florida and they're driving to New York. And, all you see is just a hat, right? They're looking through the steering wheel as they turn. And she makes a slow turn and she doesn't see his, this car, and she nicks the scratches a little bit on the side. They both pull over, they look at it, it's a small scratch. How do you think this person's going to respond? He just got a new lease on life. any normal person would be like, you know what, don't worry about it, it's fine. And she's sitting there, she's crying, she has her cane, she has her walker, she takes out her wheelchair, she's wheeling, I'm so sorry, I'll give you my insurance. He's like, no, don't worry about it, everything is okay. She's like, you're sure? Why are you such a good, like, unbelievable. You had this little fender bender and everything is fine, and you sent her on her way. Imagine you have another scenario where you just made a tremendous amount of money, and you made, you're so elated, and I don't know why you're driving. I don't know why I guess maybe I was driving today, whatever it is. You're driving down the road, and someone sees that you're Jewish, so they roll down their window. They tell you to roll down their window, but they don't look happy, and then they start yelling at you, some blessing you, waving at you with only a finger, and they just give you all the, all the happiness, just like that they have going. I tell you, I left shul an hour ago before I came here, and I was walking, and my car was like 3 blocks away because we're in Brooklyn, right? So that's all. Yeah. So I was walking, and there was a guy that was walking right out towards me, and let's just say that I heard this guy. He had headphones in, like wired headphones. Gives you a little idea, like who it is we're dealing with. And nowadays, wired headphones, like what is that? So he's like a block and a half away, and he's listening. And I can tell you, I know exactly what he's listening to, not because I could hear it, because he was literally screaming on the top of his lungs of exactly what was going on, like what he was listening to. And I could just tell you, it wasn't, spin the dreidel songs. It was a different type of song. And to the point that I saw people literally cross the street. Like it was so loud. And it wasn't just he was also doing the movements. I don't know if you could tell what type of music he was listening to, but it had a lot to do with something like moving his hands this way, moving his hands that way, and then he's pointing at somewhere, and then he says other few love words that can't be mentioned anywhere, anytime, and literally screaming, and I'm walking to him, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing? Like, am I crossing the street? Because he wasn't singing, he was screaming. You heard it literally screaming at the top of the lungs. I was like, oh, I love it. Welcome to Brooklyn, right? I literally just come back here from New Jersey, and this is my first sight that I see. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm gonna cross, maybe I'm gonna leave. And I was preparing for this class. So my mindset was all about like, of gratitude and being calm, being collected, and it was amazing because for whatever reason, I don't know, smart or not, I decided to walk like right past by him. Either I was going to get a nice story out of it, or I was just going to get to my car safely. And Baruch Hashem, I got to my car safely, and apparently I got a story out of it also. But I was thinking, I was like, imagine if I would have had a bad day, or I was very anxious, or I was I would have seen that. I'd be like, my reaction would have been so different. I would have crossed the street, and that might have been, when you see someone you see somebody walking towards you, and you cross the street, and sometimes they don't just get offensive inside, they get offensive outside. They're like, what, you think I'm going to go and I'm going to rob you? I'm like, no, not at all. And they're like, well, I am robbing you. Like, give me your money. And I'm like, oh, well, so you go, what you're going to respond to is going to depend on how you're feeling. If you're anxious anxiety, you're going to be and again, I'm not saying that was the right choice. I was literally going back and forth. Should I cross? Should I not cross? What's going to be right? Until we locked eyes. And that's when I was like, this story is over. Like, I can't just lock eyes with him, and he's literally screaming while looking at me. We're doing eye contact, and he's telling me that he's not working for any slavery owner anymore. And so I'm like, this is it was an interesting song. I'll tell you that much. It didn't make any sense to me. I don't know who writes these lyrics, but whatever it was definitely on the interesting side. But imagine if you were anxious, had a bad day, you were going to respond to this completely different. And look at the flip side on a different of the scenarios. Let's say somebody just lost a lot of money, and somebody goes and rolls down the window and starts waving certain fingers and giving you some nice blessings. And you go over there and you say, oh yeah, you want some of this? Let's pull over here and let's have it out right now. Of course, women are not going to do that. But like in the men's scenario, it'll be like, this is what road rage is. Imagine somebody that goes and leaves the hospital saying the doctor says that you don't have 48, you don't have the 2 months that I thought you had. You really have a month left to live. And imagine someone gives him a fender bender. Granted, he might not care about going to this because he has a month left to live, but he's going to respond to that situation completely different. So the way that you're feeling is going to depend on how you respond to how is going to be your reaction to certain scenarios. In fact, to every scenario. So when you think about it, if you are happy, you will have completely different responses to everyday scenarios in your life. If you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're sad, you're going to have completely different responses. If you think about it, for people that are at school or in college or recently have been to college, if you're in a good mood and you're studying, you're able to fly through the material. If you're in a bad mood, if you're just like upset, you're not able to get through the material. If you're in a bad mood and you're listening to a class, you're not focusing on it. You're like spacing out and dreaming about something else, and then you wake up halfway not knowing what, and then you try to make it, you just keep on falling deeper and deeper. But if you're so much more productive, so much more effective, so much more efficient when you're happier, when you're self-centered, when you have in this inner peace. So, the Chotz of Lublin goes and says that the secret for this happiness, the secret for this scenario, this inner peace is gratitude. If you are able to tap into the power of gratitude, you will be able to have this peace, that you have this inner peace throughout your entire life. Like, it's such an amazing idea. Like, I can't even begin to emphasize it. This is something, usually what I try to do is if I speak about a certain topic, any topic that I speak on, I have to implement. Otherwise, I feel like I can't speak about it. So if I speak about Emunah, like I'm implementing that. I'm speaking about gratitude, I'm implementing that. Gratitude is something that I've been working on already for years. And I can tell you with like 100%, I don't know what the correct word is, not accuracy, but 100% ... that it changes your life. If you're a grateful person, it changes your life. And
who's the rabbi?
The Chotz of Lublin. So I want to share with you something. This is something that I've said before, but I feel like it's so important that when I speak at Sheva Brachos, I speak about this Dvar Torah. I don't care if I go to one every day of the week, and it's the same group of people. They ask me to speak. 9 out of 10 times I'm saying this Vart because I think this is the most powerful one. For whatever reason, when people go and they speak at Sheva Brachos, they feel it's their responsibility to teach the husband and wife how to be, what it means to be in marriage. And it's hilarious. Sometimes I see like single people that they're 20, they're speaking to, they've never been married a day in their life. They're saying, you know what it means to be a good marriage? Yeah, what does it mean? Yeah, master. But it's nice. It's a nice idea. But this thought, I think it's so powerful, so amazing that it will change your life in marriage and then all other relationships. So the Gemara in Kedushin goes and tells us that we know that when you get married, there is something physical that needs to be done. There's like a monetary value that nowadays we use a ring, a monetary value that you sort of make a kinyan, you make an acquisition, make a purchase, so to speak, between a husband and a wife with the ring. And the Gemara says, where does this originate from? It originates from a Gzeira Shava from Ephron. It's Kicha Kicha Mizdei Ephron. I'm not going to go through all the details on it. I've spoken about it many times. But the idea is like this. The idea is that Avram and Ephron had a purchase contract. They had a purchase deal. They purchased a cave. Avram purchased a cave from Ephron, and they use a similar terminology to where we use a terminology for a husband and a wife getting married. So the Gzeira Shava means we take those same two terminologies, and we learn one law from another. So we learn from here that this is where you're supposed to go. You're supposed to purchase, so to speak, purchase like your spouse. Now the question is that really what it is? You purchase, it's a slave over here. Depending on which type of community you're listening to, but yeah, sometimes it's a slave for the wife, sometimes it's a slave for the husband. But really, honestly, that's not what the Torah is teaching us. What is it telling us? Why are we learning the most sacred, beautiful relationship between a husband and wife from a real estate deal? Like, that's where we're learning it from. So when you look at this real estate deal, Avram Avinu goes over to Ephron and he says, I want to buy this cave. Now, this cave to Ephron had no monetary value. It didn't make any sense. It was like a cave in a desert. Like, what use of it is going to be to him? It was no use to him. So even the point is like, just take it. Like, no. Avram says, I want to pay for it. Okay, fine. You want to pay for it. So from going to like not paying anything, all of a sudden Ephron says, you want to pay for it? Okay, fine. $2 billion. I'll just give it to you. Like, wait a minute. 1 second it was worth nothing. All of a sudden now it's 400. Silver talent. It's worth so much to you. Avram didn't say anything. He says, you want that amount of money? 400? No problem. He weighed him out the money that he requested, and he gave him the money. Now, when you look at these two people, they left this business deal, right? Avram took his money and he bought the Maras HaMachpelah, he bought the desert and the cave, he bought the burial site where he was going to bury Sarah. So Ephron leaves the deal thinking like, are you kidding me? Like what I just did? I had a piece of land that was worth nothing, and I got so much money from it. Are you kidding me? Like, sometimes when people make a purchase, they want to feel like they got a good deal. Jews especially, right? We have to feel a good deal. That's why some Jew stores, like 50% off is just the sign, right? That's the way the store is called going out of business. Like that's what the store is called. So you go and when you realize that you have a good deal, that's why you ask a Jew, where'd you get this? And then, like, I got this from here, 50% off, 60% off, 75%. Doesn't matter what it is, whether you need it or not, but if it's 90% off, you have to buy it, otherwise it's an Avera. You're going to have to do that on Yom Kippur. You have to, answer for that. So you feel good when you have a good deal. So over here, Ephron says, I got the best deal possible. Are you kidding me? I just sold this piece of land that's worth nothing, and I got so much money for it. That's how Ephron leaves the deal. Avram Avinu leaves the deal. It'd be like, are you kidding me? He says, Adam and Chava are buried here. He says, I got the best end. I paid only $400 for this. I would have paid triple for that amount for this amazing piece of land. So everybody left the deal thinking they got the better end of the deal. That's how you're supposed to go into relationships. You have to go into the relationship thinking that I got the better end of the deal. That is a lesson that we learn from Ephron and from marriage. Then when you go, you have to think like, wow, my wife, she's amazing. You have to think, wow, my husband, he's amazing. And it's not, by the way, a husband and wife. It's every relationship. My parents are amazing. I got the best parents possible. Oh, but they did this and this and this and this. A whole long scroll of everything bad that they ever did to you. But when you think about it that way, you're thinking about it, it's a negative way. Again, there's abuse. Disclaimer. Anything we're talking about today, I am not dealing with abusive situations, not in any case, because somebody did mention that to me yesterday, and it's something that we're not dealing with it today. Today we're dealing with kind of healthy relationships that we have to focus on. So when two people go into a relationship thinking that I'm the lucky one, that is going to be the healthy relationship. If you go and you're thinking, no, he's the lucky one. Do you know what a catch I am? And when you're going like that, right away you're starting down. So I find this such an amazing lesson, not only for a Chatan and Kala, but for anybody. When you're going into a relationship, you have to think that you're the lucky one. If you think they're the lucky one, your whole mindset is going to change. Because if you feel you're lucky, if you feel you had a new lease in life, if you feel you just made a ton amount of money and nothing is going to bother you, then if they forget to take out the garbage, or if they forget to cook you dinner, or if it didn't come out nice, or if they said something, you'd be like, okay, whatever. You married me. Like, I'm a nobody. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I still don't know why you married me. Like, what do you see in me? Like, it's unbelievable. Again, borderline self-esteem issue, but we'll talk about it at a different time. But when you think about it, be like, wow, it's unbelievable. I'm so lucky. I can't believe that I got someone like you. And the other one says, I can't believe that I got someone like you. So when you think like that, then you don't sweat the small stuff. So your relationships are better. So the question that we have to ask, so how do we get that feeling? How do we get that feeling that I feel so lucky? I feel so blessed that I am in this relationship, whether it's with my friends, whether it's with my, siblings, my relatives, my husband, whatever it is, any relationship, how do we tap into that feeling? So the simple answer is that a grateful person is generally happy. A ungrateful person is generally sad, depressed, and unhappy. And we can go through different examples. We're not going to get, being that it's getting a little bit late, we're not going to get through all the details in that. But if you tap into the aspect of gratitude, then all of a sudden you're not looking at the deficiencies of your spouse, you're looking at the positive of your spouse. You're not looking at the deficiencies of your parents, but you're looking at the positive of what they've given you. So when you change your mindset and you start seeing the positive and you're seeing things that you need to be grateful for, all of a sudden you're going to start feeling lucky. When you start feeling unlucky is when you start comparing them to the other people that you see. That's not focusing on the positive of your relationship, that's not focusing on the positive of other people's relationship. Which, let me tell you something, because I speak to a lot of people, Baruch Hashem, and whatever you think other people have going for them, they don't. All right, I'll tell you like this. I have it. Well, maybe because people only speak to me about the negative things. Obviously, they're not coming to me to tell me the positive stuff. But I'll tell you this: people that you think that everything is nice and dandy, everybody's got stuff. Everybody's got stuff. Nobody's just has no issues whatsoever. But when you focus on your positives, and you focus on the relationship positive, and you're focusing on the positive in general, your mindset's going to be healthier. When you're focusing on the positive, what God has given you, then everything is so much easier, so much better, so much happier. You're a happier person. If you're a happier person, then you're dealing with things very differently. In life, there's always two ways to look at things. There's a story that goes back quite, not that many years ago, but a few years ago in Bnei Brak. And it was Erev Rosh Hashanah, and there was about 150 people waiting on Chazon Ish in Bnei Brak, which is a very busy street in Bnei Brak, waiting to go to Yerushalayim for Rosh Hashanah. And 402 bus, Egged bus came, it's a bus going from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim, came up. Everybody very gently, as they do it, go up into the bus, and it ships off and it goes next. And then another bus, another 50 people go out. And then they're waiting for the final bus. There's another 50 people, fills another whole bus. They're looking over there, there's like no bus. They're waiting 5, 10, 15 minutes, there's no bus. It's getting closer and closer to Rosh Hashanah. They're like, what are we going to do? People start calling Egged, like, you gotta, what's going on? When's the next bus coming? The Eggeds are like, no, we don't got another bus. They're like, what do you, he says, there's one bus stop over here has a full busload of people. It's like, what do you mean? He says, you gotta send another bus. They're like, we're sorry, we don't have anything to send. And people are calling Egged, and people are like, these are people that they made plans for Rosh Hashanah. They have, it's not like over there in Bnei Brak, and you go to Yerushalayim, if you want to go to a certain shul, everything is packed. You got to make sure that you've got yourself a seat. They bought seats over there. They have all their food over there. They have all their, part of the family is over there. How are they going to go? Are they going to make Rosh Hashanah over here when everything's over there? So some people went and they called cabs and they start paying triple the amount of money to go and take a cab from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim, paid hundreds of dollars just to get there. But a few people just kept on waiting, and they kept on calling again. They kept on calling the bus company. Please send another bus. Please. About an hour goes by and people are about to give up. And all of a sudden there's an Egged bus that pulls up. The problem is that instead of saying 402 to Yerushalayim, it says 318. 318 goes to Rehovot. And it pulls up to the bus stop, and it's an empty bus, and the bus driver opens up the door, and he's waiting over there. But meanwhile, nobody there is going to Rehovot. Everybody there is going to Jerusalem. They're going to Yerushalayim. And he's sitting. He's waiting a minute, 2 minutes. Nobody's getting on. So he begins to close the door. As he closes the door, there's a fast-thinking, kollel guy that's sitting, back, jumps up and puts his hand by the door, and he says, Kvod Nahag, the driver, maybe, is it possible, can you take us to, Yerushalayim? You're an empty bus. He's like, take you to Yerushalayim. I was like, how? He says, it's impossible. How am I going to do that? He says, I'm sitting over here. I am the bus that goes to, to Rehovot. I can't just switch my route to take you to that. And then all of a sudden, people hear him asking that. Everyone just come in and be like, please, you got to help us. He says, my husband and my children are in Yerushalayim. He says, I can't. I'm going to be here all alone, for Rosh Hashanah. You got to help us. Meanwhile, there's another woman came. He says, look at all these orphans. They have no feet. You got to help them. And they're all in strollers. And then, and they're going and they're saying, all of a sudden, all the old people have back problems. And they're like, listen, you can't do this to an old man. They're walking before they were skipping rope over there. And all of a sudden, they're like, please, you got to help us. Everybody's begging this driver, begging and pleading, please take us to Yerushalayim. We're going to be lost without it. We have nothing. We have no seats. We have no food. We have no place to be. You got to help us. You got to take us. This bus driver is heart broke. It's Erev Rosh Hashanah. What are you supposed to do? There's 50 people going over here. So he does one of these things, looks back and forth, and he thinks for a second. He's like, Yalla, you know what? Everybody on the bus, we're going to take you to Yerushalayim. And they were like, what? Couldn't believe they jumped. Everybody was coming into the bus from all different angles or climbing up through the roof and propelling down. And they were just trying to make sure this was the last bus. Everyone's getting on this bus. They were sitting in the suitcase around on the bottom. Everybody got into the bus. As they got onto the bus, one by one, they started blessing this bus driver. Blessing him like a mekubal of the Baba Sali's grandson, blessing you and your grandchildren and your ancestors, and they'll come before you and after you. And they were like, you don't know what you've done. You're going to have an amazing year. You're going to own, blessings from today until tomorrow. And he's sitting there and he's like, amen, amen, amen. He was like in seventh heaven. They're going and they're driving 40 minutes, about an hour drive. They go 40 minutes and there's a single guy sitting 2 seats behind the driver. And he goes up to the driver and he says, Nahag, the driver, something's been bothering me really, this whole time. He says, I didn't want to tell you this earlier because I didn't want you to turn around but it's really been bugging me. How did you just do that? You're a bus that goes to Rehovot. You're to a different. Even if they call you up and say where are you? You can say there's traffic. I'm stuck over here. You should have been in Rehovot half hour ago. It's right there. And furthermore, it's they have GPS tracking on all the buses. What are you going to answer to them? How did you take that upon yourself? Now we're close. I'm hoping that you're not going to turn around and realize that you take us all the way. So the bus driver turns around to him. While he's driving, right? It's Israel, right? That's fine. It's self-driving. And angels drive over there. So he turns around, and he smiles at him and winks at him, and he says, I'll tell you a secret. He says, I am really the bus to Jerusalem. I'm really the 402. He says, what happened is that we got a bunch of calls coming to the station. He says, you didn't send enough buses. Where are we? There's so many people here. And everybody was like, they're right.
We didn't send enough buses. But nobody wanted to take that route. Imagine coming in Erev Hashanah where people are so stressed, so anxious, and they're feeling like, what we're talking about, and you come in for it, be like, what are you talking? Imagine you would have came 4:02 and be like, are you kidding me? He says, we're sitting over here, we're waiting, where are you? How come you didn't come? We don't have respect for people. This is Rosh Hashanah. People are expecting to be able to get there. People would have started. Nobody wanted the route. So finally I decided, I said, Chavra, guys, I'll take the route. And they were like, are you crazy? You're going to be berated with insults, with who knows what. So he goes, don't worry. He says, watch. Now I'm going to take the route. Not only am I not going to get, I'm going to get blessings. I'm like, what are you kidding me? Like, how is that even? You're like, there's no way. So he goes and he says, right before, I left the bus station, I was 4:02. Right before I pulled into this stop, I switched it to 3:18. And I waited for people to convince me. And once they convinced me, now all of a sudden I'm doing them a favor. If I'm doing them a favor, I don't owe them anything. I'm doing them a favor. All of a sudden, it's Yishtabach Shemo, God bless you, from today until tomorrow. What changed? What changed if you think about it? It's the same bus that took them from today. The only thing that changed was their mindset that now he doesn't owe me something, but rather he's doing something for me. So instead of screaming at him, saying, how come you're late? How come you didn't come earlier? How come are you doing that? Instead, wow, thank you so much. Same action that came out. The difference is your mindset. The difference is that you realize that you thought that this guy is doing you a favor. Look at how much our mindsets can change from being we could have been so angry. That whole Rosh Hashanah could have been ruined. You could have said things that you would have regretted. But instead what happened is that you went and you realized that this guy is doing me a favor. And if he's doing me a favor, then how am I going to react in a negative way? I go and I start blessing him from today until tomorrow. Like, imagine if you start living life that way, where you're looking that everything is a favor. When you're looking and saying like, wow, I could just look at what God did for me. Look at what my husband did for me. Look at what my parents did for me. Not saying the negative, how come you didn't come earlier? But you came to pick me up. Okay, maybe you forgot about me in the rain for 2 hours, but you came. Okay, so you look at the positive, all of a sudden your reactions, your emotions is going to be completely different. Rav Eliyahu Dessler goes and says that, why so many people are miserable nowadays? Goes and says, we live in a day and age where we are constantly being told, you deserve the best in life, right? You don't settle for anything, there is, it's sort of like I don't want to say like a mother thing, because a mother should say that you're very special and you deserve the best, but relax, all right? You're not that special, okay? Let's be a little bit honest. You've got issues, right? We all got issues. You're not that. You deserve the best. Why do you deserve the best? Like, when you have that mindset of no, I deserve more, then you're never going to be happy. You're never going to be thankful for it. If you go to what God gives you, how many people I talk to, I'm like, why is God not doing this to me? I'm doing this and this and this, and they have questions against God, and they're complaining against God because God didn't do it for you. Like, why does God have to do that for you? Why does he owe you that? God doesn't owe us anything. Everything that God gives us is it's a gift that we get. So if we think like, wow, it's unbelievable, look what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me, look at how amazing it is, you're thinking, your mindset is completely different. Says Rav Dessler, we're in a day and age that we think we deserve everything. And when you think you deserve everything and you don't get that, you're upset, you're sad. But if you think that you deserve nothing, again, borderline self-esteem, different class, if you think that you deserve nothing and you get something, you're so thankful. You're always going to be in a happy state of mind, a happy mood. This is something that you have to think about in your relationships between your spouse, between anybody, but most importantly, your relationships with God. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that have such a warped relationship with God that they come and they say, okay, fine, let's say they want to get married. So they tried to be more religious and it didn't work. Or they tried to go to more and it didn't work. So then instead of doing an introspection and be like, maybe I have to look at something different, maybe I have to focus something different, maybe not, maybe it's just not the time yet, who knows? But they start complaining at God, why is God doing this to me? Like, why is God? The second I hear like, why is God doing something, I know this is already not an intellectual question, it's an emotional question. Because what, you're going to ask me? Like, okay, let me run up there and let me ask. How do you expect? Nobody could say, why is God not answering you? Like, I have no idea. Nobody knows why is God not answering you. But when you're having that question, why is God not doing X, Y, and Z? That's not an intellectual question. That's an emotional question. You're upset. Why are you upset? Because you feel like you deserve something. And if you feel like you deserve something and you didn't get it, then all of a sudden you get upset. But if you feel like you don't deserve something, and then you don't get it, you're not getting upset. If you feel like you don't deserve something and you get something, imagine the euphoria, the happiness that you have. You walk outside, and when you begin to just like appreciate life, your whole, like, it's really like you really do hear the birds chirping. Your whole life changes when you walk outside and you're able to breathe the fresh air. You're able to go outside. You don't have to wear a coat. Okay, granted, today it's a little bit extra for that. But there's always a positive to look at it. Like I was in shul and I hear these two people, that were sitting behind me after davening. They were complaining. I'm like, oh, it's so hot. I don't know what this thing has to do the weather topic. I don't know who introduced this to the small talk community, but whatever it is, like like how is the weather? Like who cares? Like that's talking about something that has absolutely no value. Yeah, it's a hot day. Yeah, super hot. It's just like, yeah, white ceilings. Yeah, super white. Like we're like, there's no, it's just like a small talk. And what happens is that 9 out of 10 times that people are having a small talk, it's always a complaint. It's not like, wow, it was a sunny day today. Like I've never heard like small talk where it's like, yeah, it's unbelievable. The heat wave. I just got a good sauna, schwitz outside that I needed it for so long. Like, oh, it rained the whole day. Yeah, and I don't have to water my grass. It's never in the pot. It's always like, oh, it rained. Oh, it's too sunny. Oh, it's too that. It's always focusing on the negative. Always, never for a second and stopping and focusing on the positive. In Parshas Ba'aloscha, the Parshas Ba'aloscha speaks about Moshe and Aaron. I'm thinking if I have to switch this into spread this into 2 classes, I don't know what happens. Like I didn't even make so much material. Okay, whatever. This is things that I should be thinking inside, and I'm thinking outside. Okay, so Moshe and in the end of Parshas Ba'aloscha, the psukim go and speak about that Aaron and Miriam spoke ill about Moshe, specifically about his wife. And it doesn't say straight out what the issue was, but it goes on, and the Mefarshim go and speak about what the issue was. So many of the Mefarshim go and they say he separated from his wife, and they said, why are you separating from your wife? And Moshe was always need to be on call to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so he separated from his wife. So Aaron and Miriam said, but we also speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't have to separate from your wife. So that was what some Mefarshim speak about, that say that this is what they were complaining to Moshe, like, why are you separating from your wife? The Moshe of Zakanim brings down a different interpretation. He goes and says, you know what they were complaining about? They go over to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, Moshe Rabbeinu, you married this woman when you are a poor shepherd. Now you're the leader of the Jewish nation. And back then, the Jewish nation, this is like right after they received the Torah, they were everybody was talking about the Jewish nation. This was like the most highest leadership, possible. They escaped Mitzrayim with all these miracles. They got the Torah and God spoke to them. The whole world, the sea split, like crazy stuff. This is Moshe Rabbeinu, that's like the Jewish nation at the highest level. And they're saying that you married this woman when you were like, it's time for maybe an upgrade. You have somebody more on your level. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, what? He says, how do I do that? He says, where's my hakar satov? Where's my gratitude? He says, she married me not only when I was a poor person, I was a fugitive. He was running away from Paro. He had nothing. He had nothing going for him. And he says, and she stuck by me, and now I'm going to give her up? Now I'm going to throw it all away? He says, there's no way. He says, the hakar satov that I have for my wife, I will never be able to. That's what's interesting. The psukim go and says, b'chol beisi nemanhu. He was my whole house. B'chol beisi is another terminology for what? For a wife, for a woman. He says, but he is faithful. What does that mean? That he will stick through no matter what. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I can't have a hakar satov no matter what, I have to stick through. How many people in a relationship, they go and sometimes they think, okay, we were on the same level. And then one got higher, one got lower, and be like, okay, now we don't match. Now again, when you're dealing with spirituality, there is some questions that need to go on. That's something that you have to speak to a rabbi with. But like sometimes you think, okay, like I worked on myself and he didn't work on himself. Or, different areas, like he sits at home all day and I'm sitting and working, I'm making all the money. And you feel like you're not on the same level that you were once started. And you think, okay, maybe I should upgrade. Maybe this is not who so when you start thinking like that, everything starts looking at negative. You start looking at focusing on only what you're missing and not what you have. When you start looking at what you're missing, you will never ever be happy. And that's why you have people that could be multi-billionaires. They have everything, but they're still looking at what's next. And they're never, and granted, it's a great business model because you want to grow, you always have to look for the next step. But it's a terrible internal characteristic trait model. When you're always looking at what next, then you can never appreciate life. There was a guy that used to always say, he desperately wanted to get married. And he wanted to get married so badly that he said, this is what's going to make me happy, it's going to change my life. And he goes, and one of his rabbis goes and says, you know, like marriage, sometimes there's difficulties, sometimes there's arguments, sometimes he's like, yeah, but don't worry about it. He says, he wanted to get married so long. He says, I'll be the best husband ever. I've heard that statement so many times. I can't tell you how many times. It's funny because I never heard a woman say it. I heard a man say that all the time. Well, a woman shouldn't say she'll be the best husband ever. But I heard it from my man. I'll be the best husband ever. So many times. And they go, and granted, they really believe in that. They really believe they work so hard. They're great and they're going to give it all. And you know what? It's going to go great for the first week, first 2 weeks, first month, first 3 months, first 6 months. But what happens when you get used to it? What happens when you don't appreciate the newness of it? You know, you have a new car. And well, nowadays I don't know who can have a new, whatever. Like, you know, you have like a new car. I don't know if it's maybe it's a guy thing. And they're polishing it. I remember I once went to, you know, I had to. It was a student of mine, not a friend. It was a student of mine that, you know, he was such a messy person. Like some guy, whatever. His car, he had a hole in his trunk. He had this netted box. I don't know what do you call it, where you could store stuff. He had a whole cleaning supply closet for his car in there. There was a microfiber thing. There was like a little spritzer. I'm like, this guy hasn't changed his bed sheets, I could say with confidence, in many moon cycles, right? Many sun cycles probably also. Like, and he goes in, and he's sitting over there. The car is spotless. There's something over there. It's new. It's fresh. You appreciate everything. Oh, you can't eat in this car. You know, like, are you kidding me? And he's sitting over there, and everything is tip-top shape. You know, it gets a little muddy. He's sitting over there, and he's cleaning his rims because, you know, people are obviously looking at the rim. And the whole mindset of that people have in their cars where, you know, it's something, it's a guy thing. And I always laugh when I see it because you see basically a bunch of guys. Most guys don't know anything about cars, right? We know the engine, we know the gas tank, we know the tires, we can switch a tire if you're good enough, maybe jump start it and that, and you go up and be like, you have a friend that comes in or whatever, comes in with a new car, be like, oh, very cool, pop the hood, and you're sitting over there and you're like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. Be like, oh, V6, this 8-cylinder engine, rev it, let me hear, push the gas, oh yeah, those are the pipes over here, the little Cinderella guy over here is fixing it, there's a magical creature over here that's poor. You know, like, you have no idea, people are going to obsess about something. They don't have any idea, but it's new. When it's new, you're all very interested in it, and you're polishing it, and everything is all, you're putting it on a pedestal. When you have a new relationship, it's great. You know why people in the secular world go through so many relationships? Because once they leave that new state, they think that the love fizzle out, so it's done already. So once they get out of that infatuation state, they move on to the next thing. Meanwhile, they're just taking a car, and instead of, you know, some people have a relationship with their car, especially people that have the car for 20, 30 years, right? If the car is like choking a little bit, you know exactly what's bothering. It needs a little tea, you know, a little bit of this, and everything is okay. You hit it in a certain side over here. Shouldn't say that in a relationship, but it'll set him straight, right? The car is straight. When you have a good relationship, it's not just the infatuation state. They start with the infatuation state. It's great. They're cleaning every little, you know, crevice in the car, and everything is great. But then they give up, bored of it. Let's get to the next lease. I'm not saying you should have a relationship with your car. I'm using it as an example. But when you have a relationship with someone and the infatuation stage goes out, it's not when you're just supposed to go, okay, let's go to the next one. That's where you're supposed to build. That's where you're supposed to grow. That's where you're supposed to connect. That's the area of where you can tap into. So he goes, this rabbi goes to this student and says, you know, it's going to stay for a little bit, but it's not going to last. And he says, no, it will. It says, even if it lasts 6 months, there's going to come a time when you get used to it. And once you get used to it, it's going to fizzle out. You have the sick person that just got a new lease in life. It's going to last. The euphoria, the happiness, the state of mind is going to last for a certain period of time, but then eventually it's going to fizzle out. It's not going to last unless you do something about it. Your happiness, you have gratitude, it's not something you can have once. You have to have it constantly, otherwise it's going to fizzle out. You're not going to be able to tap into it. And even if it's just gratitude in life, it's not enough that you be like, okay, well, yeah, yesterday I was looking at the trees and I was like, oh, so thankful. Every single day you have to tap into what you're grateful for being on this beautiful earth. It's so there's so many beautiful things. You could look and you have, you know, you could look at the world and you could say it's such a bad, disturbing place. And you could look at the world and say it's so beautiful, it's so amazing. And I spoke to people that, you know, like literally, I could tell by how they describe something and what's going on inside. So, for example, I was speaking to, going back 6, 7 years, I don't know why I remember this particular case, but one of my students, and he was, we're speaking about having children. And he said, why would I want to bring children into this world? This world is filthy. This world is disgusting. This world has so much bad, you know, inside of it. And then, that was, and right away, when you're thinking like that, so what do you see the world? It's obvious. You see the world as bad, negative. There's nothing good for you. And he was indeed, later I found out, really depressed inside. Now, speaking to somebody else, I couldn't wait to have children. But like, wait a minute, but like the world is like, but like, yeah, but like, I can take them to Disneyland or whatever. Obviously, I had different priorities. But it was there's so much beautiful stuff in the world. So if you're in a good place, then your reactions are going to be so different, so drastically different. The idea of having gratitude to someone in a relationship changes the dynamic of relationship, not only the way that you see it, but also the way that they see it. So if you're the more that you're grateful to somebody, the more that other person wants to give to you. Like imagine you have 2 nieces. Yeah, let's say you have 2 nieces. And one, every time you go visit these nieces, you go and you buy them something. One of them is like, what? You got me a banana? Thank you so much. And she's a little 3-year-old cutie little girl. Thank you so much. I love it. Nonstop. And then let's call it a twin sister just to make it equally cuteness, so we don't have to factor that into the equation. And then all of a sudden you give her, whatever it is, a lolly, and be like, got anything else in there? Like, what else you got? And be like, that's it? Doesn't say thank you, doesn't care about it. Like, whatever, okay, yeah, okay. Say thank you to your auntie. Okay, fine, thank you. And then, go run around. And there's little other one is looking and be like, thank you so much for my banana. And you're sitting over there, you're like, oh, your heart's melting. Like, what do you want to do? Could I buy you a house maybe? Or a car? Is there anything that you need? Do you need a kidney maybe? It's so cute. Look at this girl saying thank you. And the other one is like, okay, whatever. Who you want to buy a present? Who are you going to buy a present for? You're going to buy a present for the one that constantly said thank you, not the one that constantly argued and that was depressed with you or didn't register that to even appreciate what you have. In relationships, when you go and you say thank you and you appreciate the other person, that other person now wants to do more for you. Secret of manipulation, 101, all right? You want to get more out of your spouse? Start saying thank you for the stuff that they're already doing. Oh, thank you. You are so strong, my dear. You could pick up that garbage with one hand. Guys in general, right? We do one trip from the car. It's it. Anything that's lost along the way, it's gone. It's went into a dark hole. We go and instead of, wow, you are so strong. Can you see if you could pick up the couch and I could sweep under it for a second? You're like, yeah, I think I do. And he's going to start stretching over there and be like, wow, that's amazing. I can't, so strong. When you go and you start complimenting, especially when you start stroking a guy's ego, forget about it. He's going to be lost. Even if it's the most corniest thing, he's going to accept it. No problem. And technically, we could say the same for the cooking, but whatever, for an opposite. But we're speaking to one gender at this point. So, but the idea is that if you go and you appreciate what the other spouse is doing for you, what the other parent is doing for you, what the other boss is doing for you, they want to give you more. They want to do more. So now let's look at this. If you think about this for a second, look at how amazing this is. When you appreciate something, you live a better life. You live a better viewpoint of that relationship. You feel that you're the lucky one. So you're already in a happier state, and now they want to give you more. So it's like a win-win-win-win-win situation. Why 4 times? Figure that out. I don't know. It's squared. It's so much better when you're you're grateful. So you don't lose out from it. Yet when we stop for a second, be like, how many times? And it's not enough to be like, well, he knows that I appreciate it, or she knows that I appreciate it. No, you have to say it. It's not enough and in fact, if you say it differently every time, that's worth so much more. Imagine receiving a letter from your husband saying, hey, I just wanted to say thank you so much for making me dinner this entire week. It was very delicious. Well, probably the first thing would be like, what did you do? What is this? What's wrong with you? Is there something, this is not what, you're not normal? But then when he's still like, no, I just wanted to do something. I'm sorry, I heard it in the year. I promise you. I didn't check the bank accounts. Everything is there. When you start, it'll be like, that's beautiful. That's amazing. And what do you want to do? Next week, you want to make him a better supper. You want to do even more for him because he appreciates it. But imagine somebody that comes in, just gobbles it up and be like, well, what else we got? Where's dessert? That's it? Wait, what? Oh, okay, fine. What do you want to do next week? Be like, yeah, go ahead. Go take out, whatever it is. Take him leftovers that you froze from 3 years ago and be like, this is fresh, steak that you have over here. And be like, not interested. You're not interested. When you're motivated, when you're grateful, and you want to do more. I don't know. All right, we don't do live classes that often. I'm just going to go for it. No one knows what I'm talking about at this point. I'm talking to myself. All right, there's 2 parts of a conversation that are going on over here. You just hear the one part. Okay, so I'm still not explaining it, but it's all right. Okay, so the idea of being married to somebody, or being in a certain position in life, or being in a certain relationship, or being in a certain field, we have to realize that yes, we do have the free will to get to where we got to, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu did end up putting us there. Now, it's very important. This is something we spoke about in the last class that we had, where you're not supposed to regret the past, but you are supposed to learn from the past, and you have to realize that, yes, maybe I made some mistakes in the past, but where I got to where I have right now, it's because this is where Hashem wants me to be. And that is the viewpoint that we have to focus on, and we have to realize. And sometimes in marriages, it's very unfortunate where people start feeling like, okay, well, maybe I married wrong, or maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I got into the wrong field. Wrong field is easier than marrying wrong. It's an easier change. But maybe there's so many maybes and the what ifs that fly through our mind. And the correct mindset is yes, we have to learn from the past, and sometimes we do have to change certain things. But the correct mindset in most situations, again, not in abusive situations, is to realize that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought you into a certain situation, then you need to be here and you have to deal with it. Now the question is, how are you going to deal with it? Completely different. But you have to appreciate the fact that you are where you are in your life. There was there's a story going back a few hundred years ago in the yeshiva of Volozhin. There was a person, a very high-level student, that got married, and then unfortunately very quickly afterwards got divorced. And after the divorce, he didn't have any children, so he ended up just packing up his bags and went right back to yeshiva and continued learning like nothing happened. And he's sitting over there learning in yeshiva, and a short while goes by, and there was a big gadol, a big rabbi that came in. He was looking for a shidduch for his daughter. And the particular time that he came in to look to yeshiva to find a good boy, all the lights went out, the candles blew out, which never happens. The next shipment was only going to come tomorrow. Basically the entire base medrash was in darkness. So you had there a bunch of boys that were sitting there and they were learning by heart. So this rabbi, he said, I traveled so far to go to this yeshiva. So he sat down just in the closest bench that he could find, and he sat and he also started, learning, by heart. And if you just stop for a second and think of the story, like, can you start learning by heart now? Like, even right now, right? You just listened to 53, 58, I can't read, I don't know, it's black in the thing. 53 minutes, whatever it was. Until now, can you even, if you're walking home, can you even think about, some of the things that we spoke about? I hope gratitude, happiness, something like screaming about something. But, when you think about it, can you imagine that you have to learn something so well that you're able to review it by heart? And he was sitting down, and he happened to sit down next to this particular boy who was divorced. And this boy is sitting, and he's learning out loud, and he's by heart, the Gemara, word after word. And he's asking questions, and he's answering the questions. He's reviewing everything, and he's reviewing everything out loud. So this rabbi was very impressed, and so he goes to this boy, and he wanted to say, "Are you single?" Now, "Are you single?" is there's a few ways to say it in Hebrew. You could either say, "Are you a bachar?" or "Are you nasui?" Are you single or are you married? But he said, "Are you panui?" Panui means, "Are you available?" For whatever reason, he said he picked that word, which is not usual. And this divorced guy says, "Yeah, I am available." And he says, "Oh, okay." And he says, "What's your name?" And he got the information, and he went to speak to the rabbi. And he said, "Listen, I heard you listen to you, speak, learn, and I'm here for a shidduch for my daughter." He says, "Are you interested?" And he said they exchanged some information. He says, "Yeah, I am interested." And a short while later, they ended up getting married. And this person, guy who just got married, he was saying, he says, look how God orchestrated that if the lights would have been on and he would have went to the Rosh Hashiva to say, "Oh, where's a good bachar?" they'll never point to me because I'm a divorced guy. Why would they even point to me? All the lights were off, and not only that, he had to sit right next to me. And not only he had to sit right next to me, he had to use the terminology that no one usually uses. Are you available? It says, "Are you single or are you married?" That's really what you're doing. Because if he would have said, "Are you single or are you married?" it'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm divorced." But he asked me, "I'm available." So I said, "I am available." So they started talking, and once they already got so far in, they realized that it didn't really matter, the divorce so much, and he ended up getting married. Meaning that when we get to certain places in life, who we marry, where we had to live, what our positions in life when we're not married, and why we're not married, HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrates everything. And we have to realize this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed for us. Let us at least appreciate where we're holding right now. Yes, maybe we're not where we need to be, and we have to do things to get there, for sure. But right now, appreciate where you're holding, where you're standing right now. Most people, if I could say, in life, don't appreciate the now. They wait for the future. They wait until they get married. They wait until they get their car. They wait until they buy the house. They wait until they pay off the house. They wait until the kids move out of the house. They're always waiting for the next, and they can never appreciate the now. And it's such a shame because we are in life, and life is so beautiful, so amazing. And sometimes we're so stuck in the negativity that we can't even stop for a second, take a step back, and appreciate the beauty that's around us, and appreciate the awesomeness, the amazingness, all the amazing things that God has given to us. Even you could be in the worst situation possible. I can guarantee you could find some positive things. But the people that are very negative, they will not find anything positive. I've spoken to people, and sometimes I stop them when they're, going on and on about all the. I'm like, can you tell me? Can you say thank you to Hashem for 5 things? And they're like, no, I can't. I'm like, can you say thank you to Hashem for 1 thing? And I've had people that said, no, I can't find 1 thing that I'm grateful for.
Not even breathing?
So obviously they didn't think about that. And I would say simple things, and I've spoken to very wealthy, successful people, and they had 1 or 2 or 3 things wrong, and their whole life went down. Now granted, I'm not judging them because we can never know. Sometimes something really takes a person down, and we never want to be in that situation. But if we could just stop for a second and take a step back and just look from a bird's eye view, you might not be where you want to be in life, but there's so many other things that you could be thankful for and you could be grateful for. And you know what happens? Just like I said, you have two nieces over here, and one of them is, saying thank you. Who do you want to give more to? Obviously the one that says thank you. When we go to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we start saying thank you, you know what a skula that is? You know what that skula is that you're going to go and you're going to start getting more and more if we stop for a second and say, wow, thank you, Hashem. Thank you. This is something that I teach this to my kids. We go and whatever it is that we're doing. So if we're doing something fun, I stop the kids and we're like, kids, did you say thank you to Hashem, for what we're doing now? And little kids, they get used to it. I'll be like, oh, and they say, so I have some kids that are very shy, some kids that are not shy, and they all very loud, thank you Hashem for the bike, thank you. And they start, and it becomes part of who they are to just try to think about that. How many times, when's the last time you said thank you to Hashem for anything? Not a day should go by, and this is something that I try, and sometimes I'll be honest, I don't always do it, but I try this almost every single day, is at least to say 5 things that I'm thankful to Hashem for. 5 things. 5 things that's so easy. You're breathing, your eyes, your ears, there's so many simple things that you could just say thank you. And you could start appreciating it. The famous story of Rabbi Victor Miller, that he went and his grandson saw him with his head underwater. And all of a sudden he came up and he's like, Zaidi, what's going on? What are you doing? And he said, I was walking on Ocean Parkway and, I was speaking to somebody and he said, look at all the pollution. And I stopped appreciating air. So when you start appreciating air? When you can't breathe. So I put my head underwater until I couldn't breathe. And then finally I took my breath. And then you took the first breath and be like, wow, that's amazing. Some people have certain, let's say someone has asthma and they have a hard time taking a deep breath in. And they take that medication, and they're able to go and appreciate what it is to take a deep breath. You have a stomach ache, and all of a sudden the stomach ache stops, and be like, well, I can really appreciate that I don't have this pain. I can really appreciate that I'm not going through what I'm going through anymore. So if we stop for just a little and take a step back and realize of how much we have to be thankful for, our lives are going to change. Rabbi Victor Miller goes and says that our souls experience the greatest pleasure when we focus on the goodness from Hashem. Everybody wants to have the real you is your soul. You want to tap into the greatest goodness for your soul. You want to focus on the positivity, focus on the greatness and the goodness that God is giving you. So it's not just saying, it drives me crazy when people are like, I thank the universe. What's it? You just say God, I do, no, the universe said that. You stop being a pretend atheist, right? It's God. God sent this to you and say, thank you to God. Be like, no, okay. Some people are afraid. They're afraid to make that step to say thank you, God, because then they owe God. I'm afraid, and that's why some people go, and I'm afraid to say thank you to my husband or thank you to my wife because now I owe her. And I don't want to feel that way. So people hold themselves back from being grateful because of okay, then I'm going to owe. This is something, it's your own negativity that you really have to get out of because it's going to affect not only your relationships, it's going to affect your well-being. There was I'll finish off with a story. Yeah, I'll finish off with a story. That there was a guy who got fired from his job. And he couldn't find another job. And, this is back when newspapers used to be delivered to the door. And one day he goes and he picks up his newspaper. He's looking and he opens up the newspaper and he sees 2 crisp $100 bills, tucked in. And he's like, wow, that's, unbelievable. He takes the $200 bills, puts it in his wallet, and he continues reading the paper. The next day, the same scenario plays itself. There's $2 bills inside the newspaper. And it's like, this is unbelievable. And day in, day out, the first week, it's unbelievable. The first month, it's amazing. And, he's going by 2, 3, 4 years. All his neighbors are like, how is this guy living? He's not working. And yet it always looks like he's on vacation. Like, how is he surviving? And 4 years go by, and all of a sudden, like, his neighbor accidentally took, his kid took his newspaper. He ran over to the kid and says, I need my newspaper. He's like, yeah, just take mine, my kid. So no, I need mine. He says, it's all ripped already. My kid threw it into the pool. It's like, I need the paper. And he says, fine. He gives him this ripped, soggy paper. He opens up, finds the $200, and puts it in his pocket. A few months go by, and he's going out to get his newspaper, and he sees somebody that's stepping on the newspaper. And he goes and says, excuse me, can you get off my newspaper? And he says, sure. He says, but I have a question for you. He's like, what's up? He says, how come, you have never thanked me once in the past 4 years? And the guy says, dude, I don't know who you are. Like, who are you? He says, what do you mean, who am I? He says, I'm the guy that puts $200 every single day in your paper. He's like, oh, I didn't know. He says, what do you mean you didn't know? It's 4 years. You didn't think to wake up a little bit earlier and see who's giving me, if someone's giving me $200, you're not curious? Who is giving me $200 every single day? You didn't even bother for you to think about it. 4 years, day in and day out, I'm supporting you. And you didn't even have the audacity, the gratefulness to stop and realize, who do I have to thank for? And he's like, I'm so sorry. And he starts thanking, him, for everything that he's done. And he says, now it's too late. Now I'm forcing you to thank you. He says, God goes over to us and says, every single day, I don't give you $200. I give you so much more. Every single day I go, and you don't stop and look, where does my blessing come from? Who is giving me all this money? Who is giving me all this health? Who is giving me all this happiness? Who's giving me all the food and the roof over my shoulder? Who is giving me everything that I have? If we don't stop and be like, wait a minute, God, it's you, thank you. We're not better than that guy that's getting money every single day. Doesn't even stop to realize that there's a creator. How people could go and say that there's no God is just like somebody who says, who puts $200 every single day? It just, whatever. It just comes in by itself. There's a big bang every morning, and then $200 comes in to my thing. That's how it comes every single day. Be like, that's what you think. If you can't realize that there is a God that's giving you constantly, then you're the most ungrateful person. Gratitude really the focus of this is, of course, the relationships and everything else, but really the focus is to have gratitude to God. If you have gratitude to God, all of a sudden you can have gratitude to everybody else. The main relationship that you have is between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when you're able to tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you for everything that you've given me, I don't deserve anything. Then that's going to trickle down to your relationships. And you could go, thank you to, I don't know if you should tell your husband I don't deserve anything, because maybe he'll get the wrong idea. But you have to go and you have to stop for a second and be like, wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing the most simplest things that he would do anyways. Thank you so much for my parents that they did this. Thank you for my roommate. When you start thinking and you start having gratitude, your whole life changes. So my blessing to each and every single one of us is that may we tap into this beautiful, most powerful idea. And don't let this class go by and you heard it in one and you're not going to do anything about it. Take this class, I beg of you, this is going to change your life. Do it, make an alarm every single day, do something that makes sure that you're thankful to your relationships that you have, to your business partner, to your boss, to your employer, and of course to God. And I can promise you that your life will change for the better. You'll be a happier person. You'll be able to respond to different things that happen to your life in a much more calmer and happier way. And you will be much more successful, and you'll have tremendous amount of blessings that comes in because God only wants to give every single one of us. Okay, we'll open up to questions.
So God is perfect. Why would he give you more? Like, what does the gratitude do to God?
Gratitude doesn't do anything to God.
To you.
It does to you. It's the same thing.
Why is God give you more if you're more
because
thankful?
when it's like a school, right? So why is praying? How does prayer work? Prayer doesn't be like, okay, now you ask, okay, so now you get it. Prayer, well, in a sense, yes. But the real sense of prayer is that you change who you are. So you're changing yourself, and now you're not the same person anymore. Like, how does tshuva work? Tshuva is like you're not the same person anymore. So whenever we're tapping into these things, we're tapping into that idea that we grew in ourselves, and now we got certain blessings. So you have certain schuyot. Gratitude is a big schuyot. Let's put it that way. Any other questions?
I just wrote here if anyone has, but
Okay.
I'm not going to Brooklyn.
All right.
I missed, what did Rabbi Miller say?
Rabbi Victor Miller said that if you want to have the spiritual, like the goodness, you want to tap into the soul being spiritually happy. That's focus on the goodness from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Dealing with abusive situations. The problem is when people are in an abusive situation, you should not say, oh, God wants me to be abused, so let me stick and be abused over here. That is not the correct terminology to have. You shouldn't be like, well, my husband is beating me, so let me be thankful to Hashem that I'm getting beaten every single. No, that's not the correct. You have to seek help, and you have to, there's, obviously you went through what you went through, it was decreed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it doesn't mean that you should go to the wolf and say, here, you want to bite? You shouldn't go, and obviously you have to go and speak to a rabbi, speak to a therapist, and you do have to go and really look at that from a one-on-one type of perspective, where you speak to a rabbi, you speak to a therapist, and be like, what should I do in this scenario? Sometimes you have to go, you have to leave. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's fixable, but it's not something they'd be like, well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted me to be in this abusive situation, so let me get abused. Okay.